Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of Rimworld Odyssey. It's been a short while since the last episode. I spent a few days traveling. I didn't really get to do so after getting married a few weeks ago, but I'm back now and our adventure can continue. Now, last time we left off after constructing a proper wall around our Grasslands base, and with good reason, as we were visited by mechanoids and a psychic ship soon after. We also had a trade caravan on the map, but they were not able to help, so we somewhat creatively used a pampered imperial guest to lure a group of man-hunting buffalo towards the mechanoids, with limited success. Our guest died and our defenses were put to the test, and as you can see from our base still standing, we passed that test with flying colors. Also, we saw colony founder Brian and his ex-lover Alex get back together, and with an evening rain setting in and Reno still on a mental break, they are now busy at work, as we have just harvested our first batch of corn and now need to bring over 1,500 units of the stuff below a protective roof, otherwise we risk losing a decent chunk of our harvest. While Alex constructs a few shelves, we then detect another graph core site. This here already the third one. They appear to show up with some regularity, one every 17 days so far. However, this one is located near a frozen terraformer in the glacial plains, another one of the 5 new biomes introduced in the Odyssey expansion. As you can see, it is also not exactly a stone's throw away from our base. The other 2 sites are much closer and will likely be investigated first. Before we get to that, however, we move what we can out of the rain, and we are informed that our bison Decanian has given birth once more, and she's not the only one. Goat Ruka also had a baby. So, as always, chosen from the list of channel supporters in the naming rights tier and above, our young bison will now be named Submit, while the baby goats will go by the new name of Yeti. On the next morning then, the rain is still going strong, but at least Reno has snapped out of his mental break and is busy cooking meals again. And not only that, his convert ability is also ready to be used once more, so let's use that on Nelgraf, the last remaining pawn not yet converted to the Stars of Som. And there we go. With that, all 5 of our pawns now belong to the same ideology, and especially for Nelgraf this has some huge benefits, as he now no longer suffers from a belief system that frowns upon his drug usage. Reno also spends a few moments with our dirt mole prisoner. We are still trying to recruit her, but progress is slow. On the plus side, our animal farm keeps growing and growing. This time our goat Zugi has given birth, and we name the young goat Brendazzle, a name that promises a bright future, I'm sure of it. By the way, just as a quick overview, our current list of animals is rapidly approaching 30. Especially in the goat's case, we are probably already overdoing it, which is why increasing the size of our farmland is very high up on our list of things to do today. First of all, though, we finished the machining research project, a very important one and a requirement for various forms of manufacturing. Before we explore any of those, however, let's unlock deep drilling. We built a high-tech research bench last time, and there's just no way we'll be able to expand our gravship without a reliable source of steel. In the evening then, you can also see that the flooded creek dividing the map has swollen to a rather sizable river. The rain also still keeps going, but our walls thankfully protect us from any water entering our base. On the next morning then, no more water is falling from the sky and we can begin building a bigger pasture. Once again, Alex and Brian are working hand in hand here and make quick progress, and a few hours later, with a chunk of spacecraft crashing down, a valuable source of steel and components, our animals are ready to move into their new home. Up next, Alex can destroy an ancient car that sat right next to our landing spot, and in its place we will now construct a kitchen expansion, as we desperately need a larger food storage. Eventually we will of course split our cooking and food storage areas. We will likely also install a cooler soon to prevent our meat from going bad, but all of that takes a backseat for now, as we are under attack. 2 groups of neanderthals have arrived, and the first group of 7 here already looks dangerous enough, considering that we have 2 pawns incapable of violence. Add to that 5 more from a different direction, and I have a feeling that we might be in some trouble. I suppose that's what you get for not really prioritizing defenses with a 500% threat scale randy random. Either way, we are now installing our last remaining traps and have Nelgrav venture out into the Grasslands, but not before drinking some Psychite tea to keep his mood in check. You may already be able to see what we're going for here with him. A small group of mastodons, a new type of animal in Rimworld Odyssey, has entered the map. They are formidable fighters, but before we reach them, our own animals come down with the plague. Just Zugi and the recently born Brindazzle, so thankfully not the entire flock, but we still want to treat them before the real fight begins. For that fight then, we shoot the closest mastodon with Nelgrav, who thankfully lands his shot and sends the entire group into a manhunting frenzy. Now, mastodons move a little faster than a human, especially one like Nelgrav, who's not the fastest to begin with, but we're not too far away from our base, and River is kind enough to hold the door open for him, so he can quickly slip inside. That door is then bashed upon a few times but doesn't break, and a few seconds later our enemies begin their assault. Now things get interesting. To help protect ourselves, we use Reno's animal war call on Bison Jeremiah, and we also open up the door here into our trapped corridor. While doing so, Brian forms a bond with his Colossus Toad Heezer. The first group of Neanderthals, meanwhile, has met the angry mastodons. Now, unfortunately, the animals have spread out a little, and as tough as they are, all isolated like that, they are not going to cause too much damage before the enemies take them down, especially since Neanderthals are formidable melee fighters themselves. Nonetheless, we might see a small number of human casualties here, as the second group now also starts piling in. However, the onslaught is unexpectedly short-lived. Just a few moments later, all 4 mastodons are already down. I am honestly a bit surprised by that. I had hoped they would fare better here. Now it's up to us and our defenses, which have already taken 1 life and are about to take another, but as you can see, that is not enough to scare away our enemies. All we can hope for is that the injuries already sustained in the mastodon fight will make things a bit easier for our defenders. Nelgrav takes a few potshots here as the main group makes its way over to us, but then it's time to retreat to the back line and pray that Alex and River can hold their ground. Bison Jeremiah bashing on the door here certainly doesn't help. I wanted it to fight with the others, but this way we can at least lock one of the enemy archers into melee combat. Then Alex goes down, and with that our defense is left to Teenager River and Colossus Toad Heezer, with Nelgrav shooting from behind. This works somewhat well. We do at least kill another enemy, but as you can see there is more coming in. And, well, it is a steep price to pay for underestimating our enemies, but we pay it anyway. After bravely holding the line against our attackers, Brian's Colossus Toad Heezer dies to a stab in the liver. Heezer's sacrifice is not in vain though, as the next kill here sends the enemies fleeing, well, most of them. Alex is also in mortal danger with stab wounds to the neck and leg, while River looks a little better, but is probably no longer suitable as a frontline fighter either. Unfortunately, we still have 2 enemies who remain hell-bent on getting into our home, and one of them just downed our Bison Jeremiah, so River stumbles back in to help, but goes down after just 1 hit. Nonetheless, that buys us just enough time for Nelgrav to land the kill shot, and that is enough to send the last remaining enemy fleeing as well. A dicey situation to say the least, and I'm not at all happy with what it cost us to win this. But again, we have probably been a bit too lax with our defenses and are now paying dearly for it. In the back of my mind, I always knew that if things get really bad, we can just fire up the ship and leave. But as you can probably understand, I didn't want to do that with the first proper raid on this map, and I really hoped that the mastodons would thin out the enemy numbers more than they eventually did. For that miscalculation, we lost Heezer, who ironically just bonded with Brian a few seconds before the fight began. Brian will now suffer the corresponding mood penalty. That won't keep him from working hard though. With the prospect of plenty of mastodon meat coming in, we construct a cooler next to keep our meals and ingredients nice and fresh. We also send Brian over to another nearby ruin to gather more steel, and we obtain a few units more by replacing our bedroom walls with slate. Before everyone heads off to bed then, it's time for a small funeral. Hisa was the spirit animal of this series in some ways. Our Colossus Toad sparked a ton of fan art in the first few episodes, and I'm really sad we don't get to see him live out the entire adventure. However, tragedy is often the source of a good story, and who knows what other animals we may encounter in our journey going forward. In any case, Hisa will be missed, and his life is now celebrated with a Somnari skyfire. Alex is unfortunately too injured and too slow to attend, but the others send their lanterns into the night sky, and then River throws another tantrum. Well, we'll take it for the eventual catharsis. There's nothing overly valuable in her room. Meanwhile, the ritual is still deemed beautiful, and we earn a +6 mood bonus for everyone involved. On the next morning then, River has cooled off and a batch of 7 chickens has hatched in Brian's and Alex's bedroom. Our youngest can take care of them to let off some extra steam. Reno can also use his Preach Health ability on Alex now to slightly speed up her recovery, and just as he does, a war merchant caravan stops by. Maybe we can sell them the spoils of our fights. The birth of another baby goat then, for a change, does not bring a new channel supporter's name into the series. We have enough animals for the moment, and we'll slaughter this one instead. Brian also doesn't seem to mourn the loss of Hisa too much, as he now throws a party. But what happens next is no cause for celebration. Poor young Brandazzle succumbs to the plague despite treatment. Another animal loss, and I'm very sorry about this one. I just didn't notice the absolutely abysmal treatment quality, and that likely played a role in a way too early demise. At least Brandazzle's mother Zugi will survive the illness, while Reno now slaughters the first mastodon. Not only does that yield a ton of meat, but mastodon tusks are also quite valuable, and their leather makes for decently protective gear. The caravan isn't interested in any of that though. They will only take a few of our old clothing items, not enough to purchase a female boomalope, but we should be able to tame one in due time. All that steel we gathered then goes into the construction of an electric smelter, with which we can turn the weapons of our fallen enemies into valuable steel, and we have a few steel slag chunks on the map too. Steel will also hopefully come in much more regularly soon, as the deep drilling research project is now finished, but of course, in order to know where to drill, we also need a ground-penetrating scanner. While Brian then constructs a few extra shelves in our kitchen, we are joined by 2 pigs, male and female. A wonderful coincidence, and we'll gladly take them in. We'll name them Pugsley and Matthias, after channel member Matthias Voss. The rest of the evening is spent storing away our food. The 2 pigs are brought into the pen as well, and on the next morning, just a few hours after the previous trade caravan has left, a bulk goods trader passes by. We swiftly have Reno butcher up the remaining mastodons, which then allows us to sell some of the meat to the caravan, alongside some spare corn and eggs, some furs and leathers, and even some chem fuel. We can easily make more. And no, we won't purchase the turkey couple here, even though we could. Instead, we follow the good old ABC rule, that is, always buy components, 16 of them to get our stock to an even 20. We also fire up the smelter for the first time and have a still somewhat injured Alex smelt down the spears of our enemies. We need to be a bit careful about power consumption though, as we have quite a few devices now hooked up to our lone wind turbine. As you can see, the rest of the day is uneventful. The traders leave shortly after midnight, and we begin the next morning with a small rice harvest. Reno's Itakin charm also finally breaks our prisoner's spirit, so we'll be able to recruit her into our ranks shortly. First of all, though, we are joined by yet another animal, a lone vulture. Perhaps attracted by the number of corpses we've had a hand in creating, we can now name it Joseph, after longtime patron supporter Joseph North. And who knows, maybe Joseph can become Brian's new animal companion. At the very least, we can train him to guard and attack, just like Hisa. In the evening, we then smelt down our steel slag chunks. You can see that both River and Alex are also fully healed now, and around midnight, Reno pays one last visit to the prison. And there we go, we have another dirt mole in our ranks, and this time she'll hopefully stick around. We will name our latest recruit after channel member Saber Swordsong, and I chose to use the full name this time because it fits incredibly well with her double passion melee skill of 13. She's also great at mining, animal handling, crafting and doctoring, and especially the mining skill comes at the perfect time as River unlocks the ground-penetrating scanner on the following morning, with Nelgraf carrying away another butchered baby goat. That means we are just a few scanning hours away from hopefully finding our first steel vein, and we should probably set our sights on component making next with the multi-analyzer and fabrication, but let's quickly grab long blades first, so that we can perhaps make a few good melee weapons, since coincidentally River, Alex and Saber too all definitely prefer close combat. Speaking of Alex, her thrombohorn re-equipped, she now puts up the ground-penetrating scanner. Thankfully, we had an advanced component still stockpiled. Saber, meanwhile, puts her crafting skill to good use and turns some of our furs and leathers into new and hopefully better clothing, and the young River fires up the scanner in search for underground valuables. We also bring back the steel slag chunks from last episode's psychic ship, and together with some steel mined by Saber from a vein in the map's northwestern corner, we should be able to build a deep drill too. Our teenager, meanwhile, goes on yet another psychite binge. She is definitely a little troublemaker, but also the brightest mind we have, and the one we rely on to steal the gravship, so I suppose we have no choice but to put up with her antics. Since power is heavily fluctuating at the moment with all the new toys we've built, our next construction project is then a second wind turbine to help stabilize the grid. We definitely need to have both scanner and research bench running at the same time. As a sunlight-sensitive dirt mole, Saber also prefers to work at night, so we'll have her smelt and mine some more, and we are informed that the flooding is subsiding. You can see it here, the river slowly shrinks back to its original size. Our sheep Laura then gives birth to the first lamb born in our Grasslands colony, but once more it will go straight to the slaughter. On that note, I also wanted to ask what you would like to see us do with these animals going forward. I recall the Brian's Ark motto floating around in the early episodes, and for that we would need only a pair of each animal. Is that something you'd like to see us downsize to, with a more scientific focus perhaps on animal variety, or should we keep some animals in more plentiful numbers to use them for milk, meat, eggs, fur or camp fuel? In the meantime, Brian constructs a deep drill. Now we only need to wait until we find the first mineral deposit. River then also officially becomes addicted to psychite, so maybe her and Nelgraf can get together sometime. Ultimately, it is a very manageable addiction though, and psychite tea is something our pawns are occasionally consuming anyway, so I think she'll be just fine. A few moments later, Brian successfully teaches our vulture Joseph how to guard, and thus Brian officially also becomes Joseph's new master, hopefully the beginning of a wonderful relationship. And with that, I think we have reached a good point to make the cuts in a very eventful episode. We have some more fan art this week. Briarlight created our pawns in The Sims 4, a lovely crossover to the Sims franchise, which is actually also currently being played on the channel, albeit with The Sims 3 and the World Adventures expansion. In just a few seconds, we will also have 2 submissions from the wonderful Gracie, who chose Brian and Alex reuniting as her topic, which reminds me that the 2 of them still need to get married, and who knows, maybe we can even have that marriage in space, because I think we're in a pretty good place to start working on our gravship again, and to perhaps use it to explore some faraway places. That is, if you are fine with leaving this colony behind, and us likely not able to take all the animals with us. Constructing a grav anchor will likely not be possible for some time, unfortunately. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!